So here we are to talk about this flock of sheep that I have and what it takes to produce yarn from the very beginning. You're joining us at a new point in our journey, and what you're going to see from here on out is a flock of only a dozen or so. A blend now of our beloved Corriedales and a few thin sheep. There's even one Border Leicester, and you're looking at him there in the coat. If I had started this podcast earlier in the year, it would have looked a lot different. Around 20 breeding females, 2 rams, 2 males. They were consistent in size, conformation, and fleece quality. They were really only different in color. They were old-style Corriedale sheep, square-built and stocky, close to the ground, carrying a lot of wool. Corriedale, the breed, aren't a heritage breed, though they are my heritage. Oh, I guess Peyton's trying to dress up for his video shot. Peyton is the white Border Leicester. Petoskey is the gray Corriedale. They just came in from outside. They're separate from the ewes, of course, right now because it's not time for breeding yet. But anyway, back to what I was saying, that Corriedale aren't a heritage breed, but they're my heritage. They were the first sheep I ever had. My mom brought home a bottle lamb for us to feed, and they were the breed that I sought out when I knew I wanted to have my own flock. Their numbers aren't rare unless you're looking for that old style that I was talking about. It was getting harder to find those bloodlines and that type that wasn't already related to our flock. And then when you add to that limited sources and resources for hay, we have our own hay field, but getting anybody to put it up is difficult. When my husband became ill and disabled, we sold our farm equipment, most of our farm equipment, all of our hay equipment. It was old anyway. I wouldn't have been able to keep it up. Look at these two fussing. They're like teenage boys. You should have heard me calling a few names this morning. Hi, buddy. Did you come over to say hi? Anyway, we have someone who puts hay up on shares, but that isn't always timely. They have to travel a distance to do it, and so last year we ended up buying hay. This year we bought hay, and that gets to be expensive. Get down. Anyway, where was I? Had a little tussling going on there. I guess we were talking about the difficulty in getting hay. Our sheep aren't exactly a hobby. We don't make our living from the sheep, but they have to at least pay for themselves, and that wasn't happening anymore. My husband's increasing dependency for care. Our kids and grandkids are busy with their own lives, even though they're always willing to pitch in and help. Well, it just was time to reduce the numbers. 31 sheep left this farm. Sheep we had carefully selected and nurtured until we had the fleece qualities, the stamina, and the mothering that we wanted. No lambing problems, no breeding problems. Hi, Pete. What are you doing? What are you doing, huh? Funny little Border Leicester. Easy keepers, good fleeces to sell, a lifetime of work. We had really reached our goals. 15 years that we'd spent selecting, culling, which means getting rid of what didn't fit the criteria. We had everything we wanted. Everything was working the way it should. And then we sold. Ironic, isn't it? But not all bad. Difficult emotionally, certainly. But then I think it was my brother who said that the best time to go out is when you're on the top. The top of our game, anyway. So they left. Now when I look at the flock, I see a hobby flock. There are 3 Finn sheep. There's this little Border Leicester ram. I'll use him for crossblood for market lambs. And then Peyton back there, if I get a chance to get a picture of his fleece, it's underneath of that buff colored look. Beautiful silver gray. And I'd been wanting a silver gray fine fleece for a while. He was the last from an old ewe of ours, and so I kept him. I actually have someone who will use him for breeding if I decide not to keep him. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I thought for you guys to see these 2 rams really made a statement about where the flock was at right now. some crossbloods, certainly still some Corriedale, a good focus on wool. You'll notice that Peyton, the white Border Leicester, has a coat on. It's not as tight as what it looks. He's got really puffy fleece, and so it's pretty loose underneath there. Petoskey, the gray, had a coat on, but with these two fussing like they were, it got twisted around, so I've got to change his coat. You saw Peyton wearing some hay earlier, and that's why. It's just easier. It's easier for me, it's quicker to sell, and then the turnover is better. Sat down out here at the picnic table, and I thought I would take a minute to visit with you guys. It's such a gorgeous day. If we could have days like this all year round, I think I'd be happy. Although I do like the snow. Anyway, something that I wanted to talk about as far as animal husbandry, because I did just finish moving the sheep, the ewes, this morning. And that is something that we have always called pasture scours. It's not something you hear talked about that much anymore. There's always some fancy name for something. Anyway, grass scours is another thing that you might have heard it called. We've had a lot of rain, and it's been hot and humid up until a few days ago. And what ends up happening is that the sheep get soft stool, soft manure, really soft manure. Now we've checked, there's not coccidiosis, which is a bug they can get. It's not a worm load that they're carrying any heavy. It's just too much green matter, too much wet green matter. Think about it if you were to go to the salad bar or stuff yourself on fresh greens and maybe even drink a lot of water. It's gonna maybe affect you, even though it's something that's healthy for you. So anyway, that can happen, and it's, you know, it's ugly to look at, it's messy. When it gets to be a problem is when it lasts a long time, or longer than it should. And also if it's still during fly season. Something can happen called fly strike, where actually maggots can start to happen. Anyway, it's something you watch out for, something you start to see. Normally, for me anyway, a tip-off that it's not anything more severe is that there's not a nasty smell. Coccidiosis, to me, has a smell if a sheep is suffering from that. These guys, they're not off feed, but they're not drinking a lot of water. So if it's really bad, what ends up happening is that we pull them out of the green, rich grass and feed them hay. You can feed them hay along with the pasture just to give them a little bit more dry stuff in their system. But, you know, if they have a choice between green grass and hay, they're not going to eat the hay. So we move them into a smaller pasture, one that's clipped closer or eaten down closer, and I give them hay. You want to always be sure that we always have salt with some mineral out, but you really want to be sure that that's out. And if they're not eating a lot of that, even get a block that might have some molasses, which seems counterintuitive because that's rich, but it just gives their system a little bit of a boost. This last, about a month, 2 months ago, it was pretty bad, and I actually pulled everybody in and just did a double check for worms, but I hosed off their back ends. They hate, but just to get some of that wet manure off of the back end, I dosed them with some Pepto-Bismol, Kaopectate type thing. You can do that for sheep. So I dosed them with that, and then I put them out into the dry stuff, the hay. It was cleared up in 3 days. So then, you know, the weather kind of cooled off, the rain let up a little bit, and I put them back out on pasture. We were doing fine until here recently again. Now we've got it again. Makes a mess in the barn, makes a mess on them. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. If you might see it on some of my sheep. If I'm doing some filming with the sheep in the picture. Pretty much it's straight through the flock. No one other than the other. But we've had a lot of rain, like standing water in the pasture. It is cooler, but still warm enough that the other thing that I notice is that they're not drinking as much water, so that kind of happens. So that's another reason it's important to be sure that they've got the salt and mineral when they get diarrhea that bad for that long. It's not even diarrhea, I shouldn't say that. It's just loose stool. It's not bright green, it's not dark black, it's just kind of loose stool. But you don't want them to get dehydrated or weak that way either. So anyway, I wanted to talk about something that we don't hear that much about anymore. People tend to have a feeling or want to react with some kind of a shot, some kind of a probiotic, some kind of a, they either want to think that it's worm or it's something they can give a shot for or a dose for. And sometimes it's just as simple as too much rich food. So something to be aware of. Always, of course, check to be sure that it isn't one of those more serious things. And of course, this can get serious, like I say, if something like fly strike happens. So something that you might want to check. I don't know if you can see back here. It's a real clear day, and we've had some real clear cold nights. So I'm somewhat expecting that we would have a frost tonight, and that's some plants that I'm just not ready to pot up and bring inside yet. So I just threw a sheet over the top of them. Been working outside today, working in the roundhouse, pulling up some plants and doing some trimming and stuff, and like I said, moving the sheep. So hopefully this is coming through loud and clear and I don't look too silly and there's not too bad of a glare on my glasses. Maybe you can hear the chickadee up here giving me a little grief for sitting here under the tree. And hopefully I just didn't talk too fast and in too much of a monotone. So anyway, something to think about if you have sheep. Grass scours, pasture scours, we might call it. And also not to just think if you see a flock that might look that way that, oh man, these people aren't taking care of their animals. Actually, it's literally the opposite because they just have got too much to eat, too much rich food to eat. I'll tell you, and it's a real pain that, sorry about that, it's a real pain that when hay is scarce this year but pasture is plentiful, that we have to do that. But it's what you do to take care of your animals. Okay, I'm going to pause this now and get back to work. Hope to talk some more soon. It really is such a pretty day. I wish you guys could all be here with me. And if you notice that the camera's shaking, the cat's climbing up here behind me. She got mad at me for talking to the camera and not at her. That's her "I'm not speaking to you" posture. I was noticing that she kind of matches the mums, doesn't she? Part of the fall decoration. Out here again, taking another little break. I've got supper on the stove and had my husband up for his exercises today and got him outside to enjoy the nice weather. And so it's hard for him. When he comes outside, he's reminded of the things that he can't do anymore. And so sometimes he chooses to just not think about it. But it was just too nice of a day not to get him outside in the fresh air. So we did that for a little while. We had a cup of coffee together, and now I'm waiting for supper to cook, like I said. So, and the light seems to be pretty good for doing this. Probably you can hear the highway a little bit more now, though. It's evening on Sunday, so people are traveling, even through the trees and the cornfields. I thought I would talk for a minute about one of my oldest hand-spun hand knits and one of my favorites that has stood the test of time. And I'm wearing them, and that's what made me think about it. Let's see. Pretty fancy, huh? This pattern is Campside Mitts, a free pattern on Ravelry. I think a long time ago, the Yarn Harlot, you remember her blog? And she had it on her blog and talked about it, and they were the craze for a while. And they're just a really simple, easy, fast knit. I've made the pattern a lot of times. Another reason I wanted to show these was my friend Susan, who signed up to follow. Hi Susan, if you're watching. Mentioned our Michigan Red Cedars roving, which was one I did way back in the day, and that was one of my favorites and a real popular one. That was from a ewe that we had called Colette, who had kind of a reddish brown fleece mixed with some other things, and for some reason her fleece never sold really well. It didn't photograph well, it didn't look good on her, it was kind of a rusty cinnamon brown. And so often her fleece didn't sell. And so then I would have it made into roving, and the roving would sell really well, especially if I made something up from it. So that was one that we had. But so I have them both on. There's a little sparkle in there. They haven't felted. They slip on. I wear them all the time. They don't match what I'm wearing, but they're comfortable. So I just wanted to mention that pattern. I'll try to remember and link to it in the down bar if I put this on the podcast. But you can find it really easy. Campside mitts, a fingerless mitt pattern. It's a little different construction, which I think is kind of fun. Now, since it's a free pattern, I think I can tell you this, that they have you knit like a garter band and then go around and pick up stitches and do the thumb. I actually, on this pair, I did that. But since then, whenever I've made them, I've just done like a seed stitch at the top, or just garter, doesn't stretch out that much, and then just work my way down. But I like it that they're top down. It's really kind of an interesting way to do the thumb, so I've done that a lot of different times. So I wanted to show that. Probably one of my oldest pair that I still have that I made from hand-spun, from our own sheep. Well, the sun is starting to get around here in my eyes. This hood that I have on, I have a lot of trouble with ear infection, so I always, if it gets the slightest bit cold, have my ears covered. And this was something purchased. My dad bought this for me from one of the farm stores many years ago, and I love it. I just love the fit of it. I love that it's a tube. It covers my neck, it covers my head, I can push it down. And so I'd love to either find a pattern like it or devise one. I think if I did one, I'd have to do some short rows coming up. A Mobius doesn't really work because you end up kind of having that opening in the back, you know, and you can do those double wraps, but they don't stay on the right way. Just a hood doesn't come down as a cowl as easily as this does. So if anybody has any suggestions, or I just need to look on Ravelry better, because I'd love to have one made out of our own yarn or else from some hand spun. So I can see the lights hitting me pretty sharp there. I'm going to try to hold this up for you guys to see. You saw a little clip of me in our food from the farm vlog. I was picking the last of the Hungarian wax peppers out of the garden because I thought it was going to frost. And I've used some of them, but if I can hold this up and you can see, look, oh, last of the peppers from the garden for this year. So aren't they beautiful in this old enamel bowl? They're good fried too, but the rest of them will probably go in with the last of the tomatoes that I have to put up as well. So anyway, I'm going to pause this now and go in and check on the supper, and hope you all are enjoying a lovely Sunday supper, dinner. There's been some good football on today, but it's too nice of a day to be inside. I've got to go back over to the roundhouse in a little while and close things up, and I'm also working on something with my tractor, so I need to check that. So I'll talk to you soon. Maybe I'll get a little footage from over there yet tonight. Hannah girl. Let's see. That's Naomi with the sugar lips. Broadside of us here is Weezer. Look at them fuss with each other. You see, I guess you don't see yet, Hilda. And there's the ewe lamb, but see how she's dirty on the back side. There's Marjorie, Weebs, Ninja, Hanover Lee. There's a ewe lamb, the other ewe lamb I kept. Hey, get down off of these guys. Francie. Francie doesn't like getting banged around. And Sushi. The ewes are coming in heat. Getting ready to breed. Cycling. There's one of my favorite girls, Naomi. Hilda. I'm just finishing up chores, and they came in, so I thought I'd take a little picture. Marjorie and Kelly, the ewe lamb, who's probably going to be called Penny. All are offspring of Hannah. You be nice. Look at the crimp on the spin fleece. I wanted to mention another thing about this wet weather is, you see the yellowing? My heavy breather is Hannah. I don't know why. She always breathes like this. See poo in the wool. Gotta get coats back on them. But they've been so wet. Oh, Hannah. Such a sweet face. She lost her ear tag a long time ago. And maybe I can get a picture of this darling silver gray fleece. You see it? No, she's moving too much. Francie, what do you think, honey? Anyway, time to go to the house. We're supposed to have 5 days of dry weather. Fingers crossed for me, guys, that we can get the barn clean and the sheep coated and that it cools off. So there will be no barn cleaning or hay hauling today. Does this mean housework or knitting? Knitting wins.